Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're out at the range to talk about a firearm I've gotten a lot of requests about. I got lucky and got my hands on one. This is the Sig Rattler. Been a lot of conversations going on about this firearm and a lot of people asking questions about it, and I just wanted to find out what it was all about. Now, the 300 Blackout is one of those cartridges that I was really big into, then I wasn't so big into it, and then I kind of got back into it. And I want to talk a little bit about that, but I also kind of want to focus on this particular gun, talk about some of the other guns that have been historically on the market that are a little bit more conventional in design, and compare the Rattler to those. Talk about, PCCs or pistol caliber carbines. This is the Rattler's 9mm brother, the MPX, pistol caliber carbines, and it's a cool little gun. That one started life off as a pistol. My Rattler is a pistol. This is an SB tactical brace that's on it. I have it mounted, or I have it set up with a MRO by Trijicon. And then this is just a Midwest Industries quick detach mount. On the end, I grabbed one of the cans out of copper. This is a Sig 762 QD suppressor. We'll talk about why I chose this for the Rattler over something smaller like the Omega 9K, which I have here on my BCM 300 Blackout gun. But the Rattler is one of those things that is cool to me. And it's cool to me because, a lot of people think that I hate Sig, and I don't. Sig innovates. Sig even fights for our rights. This is known as the Sig brace, even though SB Tactical made it, sold it to them, and Sig just put their name on it. But they made it popular. They fought for it. Sig even went so far, if you remember, as to coming up with a monocore baffle that they called a muzzle device that you could put on your gun, file your Form 1, then buy a tube, slip over it, and make your own suppressor very easily. I don't think they won that particular battle, but they fought for it. Things like the Rattler are different outside of the box. It's not just another AR-15, and even with the P365. I mean, that gun knocks it out of the park in every conceivable way except the one thing I keep running into with Sig, and that's the lack of quality control. But in terms of innovation, I love what Sig does. I love what Sig does to fight for our rights. I like how they push the envelopes. They don't just keep doing the same thing that everybody else does. Yes, they've done a 1911, and yes, they've done an AR-15. That's a given, but this isn't any of those. This is different. It's forward thinking. It's gotten the attention of special operations, and even I have had an interest in the gun. So I want to talk a little bit about the Rattler. I want to talk something about the 300 Blackout, kind of share my thoughts on it. We're going to get some ballistics data. We're going to get some chronograph data with subsonics, supersonics. We're going to talk about why that they decided to go with the 5-inch barrel on the Rattler, and does it really have any advantage over a 9-inch barrel, because the 300 Blackout was really intended for 8 or 9-inch barrel to optimize performance and just generally have a good time with the gun, but also explore the gun. I also want to talk about some of the updates that have occurred with the bolt and carrier group, because really the Rattler is a MCX that has kind of evolved, and there's another version of this called the Virtus that is also available, which is very similar to this, but just has a slightly longer barrel. It has a 9-inch barrel, and why maybe I think I should have probably got the Virtus versus the Rattler, but that's a whole other story. Anyway, so we're gonna have some fun with this little guy today. I do like the gun, and it's been 100% reliable, and both Jason and I have had an absolute blast with it. So let's get started, start talking about the Rattler, do some comparisons, and see what this little gun is all about, including the 300 Blackout. Just a heads up, guys, this is going to be a long video. I apologize for that, but there's a lot of data points we want to cover, so grab something to drink, kick back, relax, and enjoy what we're about to show you guys. You should find it useful. Let's talk a little bit about the ammunition we're going to use this afternoon. Now, we only have 2 different flavors of ammunition out here, which is going to open the door to a whole bunch of yabbits, but let's just talk about 2 different types of ammunition. We've got 1 sample of supersonics and 1 sample of subsonic ammunition. The subs we're going to be using today are S&B 200 grain subsonics, and this is stuff that I found through ammoseek.com. This is ammunition I purchased from these guys. They always put their business card in the box when I buy ammo from them. So some ammunition is donated to the channel. Other times we have to buy ammunition. If you're curious about how we fund ourselves here at the Military Arms Channel, we are not industry supported. We take no money from manufacturers or importers, and we are 100% viewer supported through Patreon. But we also have companies donate ammunition to us. This stuff we bought. And Here's the bill of sale, in case you care. Now, Fiocchi supports us here at the channel, and Fiocchi sent us this 125 grain supersonic ammunition. Now, the reason we're using this is because both Jason and I have had pretty good performance out of this stuff in terms of accuracy and terminal ballistics. And if you're going to go out and hunt varmint and stuff like that, we found that this makes a fairly good cartridge for doing that. So these are going to be our supers, and these are going to be our subs. So if you're going to go out there and say, yeah, but this is a better, yeah, but this is a better, sorry guys, we could be here all day filming all those different types of ammunition. These are the two we're going to use. All right, wanted to get that out of the way. Let's get some velocity data of the supersonics and the subsonic loads. Now let's keep in mind with the Rattler, we're talking about a gun that's advertised as having a 5.5 inch barrel. When we're talking about automatics, we include the length of the chamber with the barrel length. So when we say a 5.5 inch barrel, what we're saying is we have a 2-inch chamber and a 3-inch barrel, because the cartridge itself is about 2 inches in length. Now, the bullet will protrude a little bit into the barrel, but just roughly speaking, we're dealing with roughly a 3-inch barrel. That 3 inches is all you have to accelerate the bullet and to stabilize the bullet with the rifling. All right, so now we're going to use the lab radar, which is a Doppler radar system. I just want to make sure that we have it set for 125 grains, because this system will reset itself when we go from one series to another, and I made a mistake the other day. I don't want to make that mistake today. So we've confirmed it's a 125 grain projectile. All right. And now we're going to go ahead and hit the record button, load the Fiocchi 125 grain load into the Rattler. And I got to hit the record button, because you always got to hit that twice, sometimes. And let's see what we get. Okay, 1,800 feet per second. All right. Now, some of you guys are going to say, oh, Mac, you're an idiot. You got your muzzle device on wrong. No, well, yes, I do. But the reason it's on wrong is because I don't know if I'm going to stick with the Sig can. The suppressor comes with the muzzle device, a little ring for the proprietary taper mount of the gun, so you can clock this muzzle device if you choose to. Doesn't matter to me, because right now, as I'm testing it, I'm running a can, and this is ultimately irrelevant. Okay, so just wanted to address that. 1,800 feet per second. So at 5 yards, we're doing 1795, 7 yards, 1791, all the way out to 35 yards, we're still doing 1,729 feet per second. So let's take a look at that and what that turns into with regards to energy. So even out of a 3-inch barrel with a supersonic round, we're looking at a muzzle energy of 905 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. Okay, that's not insignificant. That's pretty darn good. All the way out to 35 yards, we're still looking at 829 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. And there's your power factor, 224.4. All right, so let's go ahead and clear this out and set the bullet velocity, or set the bullet weight and velocity range to a different setting. Okay, so I'm going to clear this out. I have to go in here. I'm going to set the projectile weight to 200 grains. And hit OK. And then we have to go back up here and set the velocity range to handgun, because now the bullet's going to be going much slower because we're going to be shooting a subsonic load. Okay, here's our 200 grain S&B subsonic load. Going to go ahead and make the weapon ready. And let's see what we get out of this little guy. Much less recoil, much less muzzle blast, and we have a muzzle velocity of 828 feet per second at the muzzle. Out to 35 yards, we're still doing 822 feet per second. So we have a very good ballistic coefficient. So when you're looking at comparing this to something like a 9mm, 9mm is going to be more or less a brick through the air as compared to the Spitzer bullet of the 300 Blackout, which is doing very well at distance. It's maintaining its velocity because it has a very good ballistic coefficient as compared to a handgun. All right, so let's go and take a look at what we get in kinetic energy. Okay, so now we're looking at 304 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. Not quite so impressive. That puts us into handgun caliber range. Okay, and we'll demonstrate that here a little bit later. At 35 yards, we're looking at 299 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. Okay, so this is very much, with a subsonic, a handgun caliber rifle, carbine, pistol, whatever you want to call it. So it's really not doing much better than a 9mm. That's pretty interesting. So if you're looking for penetration, if you're looking for energy, you're going to have to run supersonics in the Rattler, because if you run subsonics, you're really not doing much better than a 9mm carbine. And yeah, we'll talk more about that here in a minute. I made a statement previously that I need to quantify. I need to prove it to you guys, because I don't want you guys just taking my word for it. So here is a gun I've been carrying now for a little while. This is my Walther PPQ Q4 TAC. It's a 9mm, has about a 4.5-inch barrel. I'm using a 124 grain Fiocchi ball round. This is the exact same stuff we use in our gauntlet testing and stuff like that. It's a fairly warm 124 grain NATO spec ball round. Now, we still have, this is our data from our 300 Blackout subsonic load, 304 foot-pounds of muzzle energy with a power factor of 155.4. So let's go ahead and go back in and make sure we're still at the handgun. We're still at handgun. We need to go to the bullet weight. We need to bring that down. It's at 200 for the subsonic. We need to bring that down to 124 grains. Takes a little while here. And almost there. Went right past it. It speeds up the longer you hold it. All right, 122 and 124. Okay, 124 grains. Handgun velocity. We're going to go ahead and hit the record button. Chamber 1 round. And let's make sure our muzzle's in the right spot for it to pick it up. And so we have 1,200 foot per second out of a 4.5-inch barrel using a 124 grain projectile. And out at 35 yards, we're still doing 1,100 feet per second. So we've shaved off 100 feet per second on that 9mm. Remember what I was talking about earlier, how the 9mm drops off very quickly? Because it doesn't have the same BC as that Spitzer bullet. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the power factor, though, and the energy here. The 9mm at the muzzle has roughly 90 foot-pounds more of muzzle energy than the 300 Blackout subsonic. As we move out to 35 yards, we have 337 foot-pounds of energy with a power factor of 147.1. So that kind of puts things into perspective. Just out of the handgun, not a PCC, which is a pistol caliber carbine, out of a 4-inch barreled handgun, the 9mm at the muzzle is giving you a better is giving you more muzzle energy. But does that necessarily mean it's better? Well, that Spitzer bullet has a better chance of penetrating body armor, where 9mm has no chance of penetrating to a level 2 body armor. So anyway, just something to think about when you're talking about the power of 300 Blackout as a subsonic out of such a short barrel, or maybe even out of a 9-inch barrel. We need to test that. This is a Zenith R5S. This is a MP5, if you will. This has an 8-inch barrel, and it is chambered in 9mm. I have 2 loads. I have a 147 grade subsonic load. We'll put that in first, which means we'll shoot it last. And then on top, I have a 124 grain Fiocchi NATO standard ball load. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and insert that into the Zenith. Now I'm going to go into the menuing system here. I'm going to set the velocity range to handgun, still should be good there. Let's go down to the projectile weight. The first one, we will be shooting a 124 grain super. So we got to go all the way down to 124 grain. And just about there. Okay, 124 grain, reality check, should be good to go. We'll accept that, and we'll go ahead and hit the record button. And we've got the handgun up there, so we should be good to go. All right, we're going to fire 1 round of the Fiocchi 124s. Okay, so out of an 8-inch barrel, 9mm, we have a muzzle velocity of 1,336 feet per second. Out at 35 yards, it's 1,226 feet per second. So we've already shaved off over 100 feet per second going from the muzzle just to 35 yards. It goes back to the 300 Blackout having a superior BC with that Spitzer bullet. Okay, so there is a definite advantage there. All right, let's go ahead and see what that translates into with regards to energy. Energy, 491 foot-pounds at the muzzle, and out at 35 yards, 413 foot-pounds of non-muzzle energy, just energy. So as you can see, we can also see that the energy is dropping off with the bullet velocity. Makes perfect sense. All right, so now let's go ahead and reset things and do the subsonic load. I'm going to change the projectile weight to 147 grains. Okay, 147, still should be set to pistol. I'm going to accept that. Going to go ahead and hit the record button. And now let's see what we get out of our subsonic load. Nothing. Didn't even register. Yeah. All right, we'll be right back. I'm going to grab another subsonic load. I put 2 subsonic loads in here this time. Now keep in mind, this lab radar detects the muzzle blast. It's a pressure sensor that starts the Doppler radar looking for a projectile. So if it doesn't make a loud enough boom, or if there's not a sharp enough pressure wave, it won't start checking for a bullet. All right, so let's try this one more time, and we'll just fire 2 rounds if we have to get a muzzle velocity. Okay, there we go. It registered that one. So now we have 922 feet per second at the muzzle. Out at 35 yards, we've dropped down to 898 feet per second. Let's go ahead and stop that. Let's jump over and see what that translates into in terms of energy. At the muzzle, 277 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. Not all that impressive. Once we get out to 35 yards, that's dropped down to 263 foot-pounds of energy. And we got a power factor of 135.1. So, as you can see, the subsonic 9mm is fairly anemic and would be definitely best suited for close quarters battle. You're not going to want to be shooting at somebody 100 yards with a 147 grain subsonic load out of a PCC. As you guys know, I post all over social media, and I post on Instagram. I posted a picture this morning before we started filming of my Rattler next to my BC M300 Blackout, and a self-proclaimed Sig employee, and I only say that not to be derogatory, but because I have no idea if he works for Sig or not, made the rather snarky post because I said nothing about comparing the two, that one was superior to the other in any way whatsoever. I just posted a picture of them together saying we're having some fun today. He makes the snarky post, why not use the Rattler as intended, unsuppressed in a concealment role? So this Rattler is in 300 Blackout, and yes, this thing is tiny and extremely concealable. Now, it's not exactly what I would call lightweight. This gun weighs as much as a standard AR-15 in some configurations, but it is very concealable, and it's a good-looking little gun. Very handy little gun that's given me flawless performance, 0 malfunctions with the ammunition I've put through it so far. And we've put several hundred rounds through it, and we're going to demonstrate that here momentarily. But his argument was that this gun was never designed to be suppressed. There was an article written by Tactical Life where they did consult a known Sig employee, and this is just what Tactical Life wrote regarding the Rattler. In fact, the Rattler comes in at just 3.5 inches longer than the ultimate CQB weapon, the MP5K. Whether it's the ultimate CQB weapon or not, that's, arguable. It's a good one. We wanted, and this is quoting Sig, we wanted to give these guys a gun in a subgun size, but that had the firepower to shoot to 200 plus yards and effectively do what they needed it to do. The Rattler can fire suppressed in the 300 Blackout configuration. I fire mine suppressed. But Sig says the barrel is too short for operating the 5.56 cartridges with the can. So this thing in 5.56 with a suppressor is a no-go according to Sig. Now the guy posting on my social media knows full well this is a 300 Blackout gun. So I don't know why he's saying what he's saying or if he even really works for Sig. But there's a couple of things here that I would like to point out. His argument that this gun was not designed to be suppressed should probably be taken up with the engineers at Sig, because there's 2 things going on here that clearly indicate this gun was designed to be fire suppressed and unsuppressed. First of all, it has Sig's proprietary taper mount cut to the barrel for their proprietary cans. It even ships with the little ring that you put over the proprietary taper mount so you can run regular suppressors that don't have the Sig proprietary taper mount. Evidence one, that the gun was designed to, in fact, be fired suppressed. Secondly, it has an adjustable gas regulator. This is designed for use with a suppressor. Okay? So, the 300 Blackout, its entire purpose, the entire reason it was developed, was originally sold as the 300 Whisper. Why do you think they called it a Whisper? Because it made a loud crack in the woods? No, because it was intended to be shot as a subsonic with a silencer, a Whisper. 300 Blackout is an evolutionary name change. It's still called by some manufacturers the 300 Whisper. So yes, I'm going to run a suppressor on this. Sig obviously intended it to be used alternatively with a suppressor, but does the gun work without the suppressor? Absolutely. So it's designed to be used as both, as evidenced by the simple mechanical configuration of the gun. All right, to that end. Now I have it in its suppressor setting, but I'm going to show you guys something. I have both supersonic and subsonic loads. Now what we have noticed with PMags, Lancers, whatever, if you're shooting subsonics, the bullet shape is considerably different than the supersonics in many cases, and it can be unreliable with the full 30 rounds loaded into a standard 5.56 magazine. The supersonics, you can get 30 rounds in there, no problem. Sometimes it'll cause an issue with the subsonics just because of the bullet shape. So what I'm going to do now, go ahead and extend my SP Tactical brace, take a magazine of the supersonics, and show you guys that this gun works just fine. All right, just like Sig says, works just fine if you like muzzle blast. I don't. I like whispers. These are the subsonics, not messing with the gas setting. Okay, that is a magazine malfunction. See how the round nosedived? And this is what we're talking about, how 30-round magazines and subsonics don't necessarily play well together. So I'm gonna have to take a few rounds out of the magazine. That was not the fault of the Sig. That was the fault. Look, see how the rounds are just kind of falling out? There's no real magazine tension. We have to take a few rounds out. See how that nose is just wanting to drop out? That's because we need to get a few rounds out of here. Not the fault of the gun. I use 20-round magazines with the subsonics, and they seem to work better. Okay, again, not the gun's fault. All right, see? Works just fine, aside from the magazine issues with the subsonics. All right, guys, so we're at 100 yards, and I'm going to be shooting some of the 200 grain S&B subsonic loads. There's this little teeny tiny steel plate down there. I can just barely see it. Disappears in the woods. It's painted white, and we were out here the other day, and we were hitting it fairly regularly at 100 yards. Now, one of the largest SIG dealers in the state, I happen to be good friends with him, and he had purchased 3 of these Rattlers and 300 Blackout, and he had keyholing problems with supers and subsonic loads, and he finally just went to the Virtus, which has a 9-inch barrel. I like the short handy package of this, and I'll probably wind up, like I said, putting an Omega 9K can on here, the shortest 9mm can I can find on here. Now, Sig does the rep that I'm talking about on Instagram, does insist, and it very well could be the truth, it probably is, that the gun was not intended to be suppressed. Okay, that the gas setting is for supers and subsonics, not necessarily for suppressed, unsuppressed, whatever. The gun's designed to be shot suppressed. He does concede that. It just, he says that that's not its mission. Its mission is 200 yard plus capabilities. Now, we don't have 200 yards here, but we do have roughly 100. We've had good accuracy out of this S&B stuff, and I'm going to try to show you just how accurate it can be. Now, in the civilian world, we shoot 300 Blackout suppressed. Like I said, it's the entire point of the cartridge. Without a suppressor, go buy something more effective. Get a 6.8, get a 6.5 Grindle, 300 Blackout. When it's supersonic, there are far more effective calibers out there. But its purpose is being suppressed. That's how we use it in the civilian world. I'm not a special operations guy. I'm just a trigger puller in the civilian world, and I want a nice, quiet gun. And if Sig doesn't want to sell a nice, quiet gun in a short, handy package, don't make it suppressor capable. But it does great with a suppressor. The only downside to this gun, and this is true of the entire MCX Virtus line in general, this, if you think an AR-15 is gassy in your face, this thing sucks. It does everything else fine, except this thing pours more gas in your face than anything I've ever shot. Now, some people think that direct gas impingement causes more gas in your face. No, less than 10% of the gas that you get in your face comes back down the direct gas impingement tube. All that gas pressure that you're getting gas in your face is actually coming down the barrel. This thing is a gas sieve. If you're shooting supersonics through a suppressor on this thing, you're going to get off 10 rounds and you're going to be crying like a baby. It's like going through the CS gas chamber in boot camp or out in the fleet when you're just out when you're staff NCOs have nothing better to do for the day. Anyway, so what we're going to do here is we're going to run subsonics 100 yards trying to hit this little dinky steel plate that I can practically not even see, but the other day we were having some pretty good luck hitting it. So let's see if this little guy can pull off the hits. Now keep in mind these are subs, and at 100 yards it's going to have the energy of maybe a 9mm. So would it be lethal? Yeah, it should be. Is it the most powerful cartridge? No. But I still think it's pretty useful. Let's see if I can get a hit. Now I have to hold on the top of the target because this thing's actually 0 to 50 yards. Let's see what I can do here. I have a can on top of it too to help me see it, but it's going to fall off on the first shot. See? All right. Maybe you guys heard it. Maybe Jason can zoom in, but I hit that little tiny steel plate. Just hit it again. Now that hit the dirt. Hit it again. Nice solid hit. Hit the dirt. Nice solid hit. Hit it again. Hit the dirt. Hit. Hit the dirt. Hit the plate. Hit the dang dirt. I can't see, guys. I'm getting gassed out. I'm losing sight of the plate. I can't really see it at the moment. Let some of that gas clear. My eyes are watering. And no glasses won't help. I can't shoot any better with them. Oh, dang it. Yeah, I can't even see the plate anymore. I don't know what happened there at the end. The Sig cans don't usually back off. I can't see the plate. Anyway, so I got gassed out there towards the end. You can see the gas coming out of the end of the barrel. Got my eyes watering, and I stopped being able to score hits. But if you look downrange, that's a very small plate and very tough to hit. So the accuracy with a red dot sight. Now, really, there's 0 point to putting a magnified optic on a gun like this. I could definitely shoot better groups and hit that thing much more easily if I had that 4-power ACOG on there, but it kind of defeats the purpose of this thing being a super tiny thing. So does that giant can, which I'll swap out later. But let's now just shoot at a man-sized target. Sorta. We got a hostage taker target down there. Everything down there is like invisible to me. It's all painted white. We got like white targets stacked on white targets. Let me, the one man size I want to shoot at is nowhere near being in my line of sight. So I'm going to shoot at the IPSC target at 100 yards. It's a little bit bigger. I can see it. Now, if Jason's getting in tight, you're going to see the gas cloud that's just enveloping my face. You can see the gas just oozing out all over the gun. Those are the subs. Let's fire a few supers. These will get really gassy really quick, but we only have a few of them in here. The point of impact shift is tremendous. I'm not even on steel anymore. And I'm getting blasted in the face with gas. Like, it is a blast of gas, like a wind gust in the face. It's completely unusable. And I have no idea where the zero is. This thing's zeroed for subs. That's all I'm ever going to shoot out of it. The supers definitely have more energy, are definitely more effective, but this is going to be something that you'd want to keep in your truck or car as a personal defense weapon, as a civilian. That's short, handy, very concealable. Maybe you can get it into like something like a letter bag, and that's what its intended purpose is. And I think it excels at that. That's really good, and I'm going to go with a smaller can. But running supersonics out of this thing, or running it without a suppressor, the blast on this thing is going to be horrendous. I would not want to shoot this thing in the house in a self-defense situation without having a can on it. So in my opinion, this gun, the way I want to use it in the civilian world, not what Sig wanted to use it for in the military, is I want a short, nice, quiet can subsonics in a CQB situation where I'm not shooting much past 50 yards in a self-defense situation, which is about as far as you're going to get away with probably in a court of law. So I think in that context, this is a pretty cool little gun. Now let's take a look at the inside of the gun, and we'll talk about one area where I'm not so impressed with the Rattler. Oh, God. Woo! So here's that little steel plate that we were shooting at from 100 yards. You can see where I was hitting. Now, I was jacking around with my suppressor today. I was twisting it on, taking it off, and more than likely I screwed with my zero because I was wondering why I wasn't hitting pretty much 100 for 100, because the other day I was, and I think I know why, and that's why. I was messing around with my, my suppressor and the muzzle device, and this is proof of that. Aiming here at 100 yards, or roughly in here, you'll notice I was low left. It should have been more right here. That's where it was before I started jacking with my suppressor, before we started shooting this video. We were just out here a couple days ago shooting. I had my gun perfectly doped. Let's take the Rattler apart and talk about some of the things I like and dislike about the overall design. First of all, the weapon's clear. No magazine in it. It's clear. Do have a T-handle charging handle system on the top, which has ambi releases on the T-handle. Have a pick rail, runs across the entire length of the top of the gun. It has hard points in it, wear points that are user serviceable. You can swap these parts out. You can find them on the side of the rifle here. You can find one here next to my index finger. So presumably you can keep the gun in the field up and running longer because the wear points are replaceable. There are different stock options for this. This is a pistol, so this is a brace, but this has the collapsible version. You will find other versions with side folding stocks and things like that. So it's pretty flexible in terms of how you can configure the gun. But the nuts and bolts of it is this upper is pretty much compatible with a standard AR-15 lower. The trigger assembly is pretty much a standard AR-15 trigger type assembly as well. The controls are that you have dust cover that is almost identical, that is identical to the AR-15. Have your magazine release right here where you would expect it to be. Have ambi selector controls on both sides of the gun. We get over here to the other side. We have the paddle release, bolt stop. This is a nice little lever that makes it easy to lock the bolt to the rear. And then you have a ambi magazine release here. And of course, then your selector lever as well. So the controls are actually really well thought out on the Rattler and the Virtus and guns like that. Now, I will say this little tiny guy may look lightweight, but it's not. It's a chunky little dude. It's heavy for what it is. but it's not stupid heavy that it would be uncomfortable to carry. It also has QD points front and rear. These are well located, and they're on both sides of the firearm. All right, so let's take it apart. Use the tip of a bullet. Now, for whatever reason, when you take a look at a quality AR-15, what most quality AR-15 manufacturers do these days, take the upper and lower, marry them, drill the pinholes, and then keep them together throughout the entire production so that there's no slop between the uppers and lowers. Sig has, over the years, toyed with different ways of taking the slop out of the uppers and lowers versus drilling the uppers and lowers together. They may do it, they just may not do it to the same tolerances as companies like BCM, but they use this old thing called an AccuWedge, which I absolutely hate. I think it's just awful, and it just masks, in my opinion, poor fitment. So the Rattler, and I'm guessing the Virtus and all current ones, if you look where the tip of the bullet is, there's this little AccuWedge stuck in there. Now in the earlier MCX, it was a little bit more expensive probably to produce, but they had a little plunger and spring system in there that pushed up on the bottom and took the slop out of the upper and lower. This is a lower cost alternative to that, and it's just kind of just bad. Anyway, so I hate those things, but there it is. But there's no rattle between the upper and lower on the Rattler. All right, now I'm gonna wiggle the front or the upper back and forth so I can pull that secondary pin out. And really, guys, this is just pretty much an AR-15 style lower, right down the magazine well, the fire controls, things like that. I'm gonna set this aside. Now I'm gonna take the bolt and carrier out. I can just pull the T-handle back, and then the bolt and carrier just simply drops right out of the gun. T-handle comes out, looks like an AR-15 T-handle, feels like one to a degree, but it's smaller and not compatible with an AR-15. Now, once you get that out, you can take your handguard, pull forward, and it comes off. You can quickly and easily change your barrel on this and the MCX and the Virtus. You just loosen these two bolts and you can take your barrel off. You can easily access your gas system as well. One of the things I don't like about the design in general is if you look down the receiver, there's a couple of things going on here. First of all, you're going to see light all the way through. If this gun were dropped muzzle down into the mud, you would be able to get mud and dirt pushed straight into the action of the gun from the front of the weapon. Secondly, the AR-15 is hard enough to clean, and its upper receiver is pretty much just a round hole with a square long cut on the top for the T-handle to ride in, and just trying to clean that out with a Q-tip, having been in the military and having to have a Q-tip clean, was nightmarish. But you could get a rag in there with a screwdriver, a toothbrush, and you could run it back and forth fairly easily and get it really clean. This thing has this T thing going on up here with a hole down here. Trying to get this thing cleaned out is beyond nightmarish, and I wish somebody would come up with a swab, and maybe they have, it's basically this shape so I could easily clean out my receiver. Otherwise, you're just sitting there forever with Q-tips and rags and toothbrushes, and you're still never really getting it fully clean. I wish I had a sonic cleaner big enough to take this thing and drop it in there. But anyway, so that's your upper, and again, it has those hard points that you can take apart and replace. Now I'll set this stuff aside. What I have here is an original MCX bolt carrier. This one's for my 300 Blackout. Back in the day, they used to mark them. This is my first rifle you've seen here on the channel before. I've had it in 5.56 and 300 Blackout. So this is the 300 Blackout bolt carrier, and this is the new Rattler, and this would represent also, I would imagine, the Virtus, although I've not handled one or taken one apart, but there are a number of key differences between them. Now, it looks as though Sig has tried to simplify the disassembly and improve the reliability of the system, which I think they've done, but it's still not as easy to take apart as an AR-15. They've taken an AR-15 and made it even more complex to take apart. But this is improved over the original. So let me show you the original. Nothing fancy, had one just completely blow up on him. This rear piece here on the original gun was a piece of plastic. Who at Sig thought that was a good idea, I don't know, but I think we pretty much all saw that coming, because I remember discussions saying, why is that plastic? Why isn't that made out of metal? Well, we found out later it should have been, and on the Rattler, it is made out of metal. But back in the day, you used to be able to pull this spring down, turn this out, and this was required for disassembly. Take this recoil spring off, drop out the rod, and then you could, you'd have to do this to get to your cam pin, drop out, take spring, drop out your rod, take it all apart. Then you could rotate your cam pin over. You have a cotter pin, much like an AR-15, that you'd have to pull out that was non-captive. And just like the AR-15, it mimics. It can be a little bit of a pain. You could drop your firing pin out, and then you could rotate your cam pin and have the cutout here in the upper. Take your cam pin out, take your cam pin out, and then get your bolt out, okay? You're gonna notice some differences here. Look at all these parts. What a nightmare, okay? It made the AR-15 look simple by comparison. Try putting that thing together in the field at night. Yeah, this is something you do back at the rear. Bad design, but they worked on it. All right, so I'm gonna take all these parts, probably lose a few of them here in the process because there's so many of them, and we'll worry about putting that back together later. I already saw something roll off. I think it was just it was my 300 Blackout cartridge I was using for a disassembly tool. Okay, fast forward to the new design. The new design, this piece is no longer plastic, this piece is metal, and it's pinned in place so you're no longer taking your recoil spring apart. At least it doesn't show me in my manual that I could find on how to get the recoil spring assembly apart. You're just gonna have to clean it the way it is. You can do that by pushing forward on it and wiping the rods off, but that end cap, like I showed you on the previous generation, isn't coming off because there's a roll pin through there. You can drive the roll pin out and take it apart, but you know, it's not just something you're gonna do as basic field maintenance anymore. This piece rotates up, all right? There's this little safety lever here now that if you take the tip of a bullet and you push up on this little spring-loaded lever, you can push across on a pin. Be careful because I'm gonna remove my firing pin. Over here we have the pin coming out. I'm gonna put my finger there so the firing pin doesn't go sailing. Pull this pin out and it's captive, okay? That's actually an improvement over the cotter pin. I like that, all right? Now the firing pin, once you push up on this little safety thing, use the tip of a bullet, you can kind of sort of pry your firing pin and spring out. All right, now to get your cam pin out, you can kind of twist these springs out of alignment and push the bolt back and rotate your cam pin and pull it out, but just it's really tight, and putting it back in is difficult, but you take the bolt out, and that is all you really need to do. Now there's one more dinky tiny little pin. I'll point at it with the end of the firing pin. Right at the end of the firing pin there's a little tiny dinky pin. You can push that pin out. That's going to cause this spring-loaded safety here on the top to come out. And then you can kind of slide this whole assembly, the recoil spring assembly, away from the bolt carrier. I don't recommend doing that. That's something, again, you would want to do back in the rear if you just want to completely thoroughly clean the gun. When I first took this thing apart, I had to take it off because I could not get that darn cam pin in there because it was so close to that recoil spring. Now you'll notice there is a difference in the basic bolt designs. I don't know if this is a Rattler versus a MCX Virtus thing, but there's a basic difference there. But it's also using kind of a standard AR-15 extractor. All right, so putting this thing back together, you want to rotate this thing back up, line up the cam pin hole, kind of twist everything without that cam pin hole rotating on you. Try to get the pin in there, but it fits really tight. All right, got it. Actually, that went pretty easy that time. I'm getting better at it. And now you just pull it forward like a standard AR-15. Take your firing pin and spring, drop it down inside. But you'll notice, I don't know if Jason will be able to zoom in there, that little safety mechanism is blocking the firing pin hole. So pull up on that little safety mechanism, drop your firing pin in, push it forward, all the way forward. It'll pop, and then try to push this little pin across, and sometimes it'll go across very easily like it did that time. Other times it'll fight you and you'll have to kind of wiggle it around and whatnot, but it goes back in. Love the captive pin, definite improvement. The fact they don't want you taking this apart makes sense, otherwise you get a complete mess of parts like you have here, which would be a complete maintenance nightmare for the grunt in the field. That's not grunt proof. This is more grunt proof, but it's still less than ideal. But then again, I'm biased towards the AR-15. I think it's relatively simple to take apart in the field. This, a little bit more difficult. So the other thing I want to show you guys here really quick is that, yes, this weapon is clear. I'm going to take the upper and lower off, and this is one of the things that Sig touts. I'll go ahead and put my handguard back on here for you. Which one of these is the right T-handle? Yeah. All right, I'll go with this one. Get the T-handle in there. Get your bolt and carrier. Slide it in. All right. Now I want to say there was an adapter plate or something they had back in the day. Right now it just says caution on there. My old man eyes can't see it. That you would put back there as a spacer. That may have been something they did for the polymer days. I don't know. I actually did this with my old original gun, fired it, showed it worked, and I didn't have anything blow up in my face, but I'm not going to say that it's ideal to do, because as you can see, that retainer, which is now metal, before it was just plastic, is just barely engaging the top of the lower receiver there, holding it all together. But it does fit on a standard AR-15 lower and will fire. So anyway, I thought I'd show you guys that. So overall, I think the Rattler and the Virtus is a definite improvement over the original MCX design. The MCX design just wasn't ready for prime time when they released it, which sadly is the case I find with many Sig products, kind of like the P365. It seems now they've really kind of gotten this thing refined. As I've said, I've had 100% reliability with this little guy, and it kind of makes me want a Virtus. The downside, and that stupid AccuWedge, the downside is these things are insanely expensive. So don't expect to see me with a Virtus here anytime soon, although I'd like to try one out. The Virtuses, I think, are gray right now. I've seen them. I know that the barrels are modular. Hopefully at one point down the future, I might be able to put a 9-inch barrel on this one to get a slightly longer handguard, and that would be cool. But there you guys go. Those are the features, and that's how you take apart the Rattler / Virtus. I'm guessing they're the same. Overall, I think the Rattler is a cool concept. I like the gun. It's a lot of fun to shoot. As I said, I use 300 Blackout differently than some other folks may use 300 Blackout. I use it primarily for suppression. As a suppressor host, the Rattler is just not a very good host. You get a lot of gas in your face, far more than you would get out of something like a BCM. But the controls, the small size, the ergonomics, the shootability, has a good trigger. I like everything about it, 100% reliable, and yeah, it's just a different gun to get used to in terms of field maintenance and things like that, but there's nothing about it that says don't buy it. As a matter of fact, the only thing that says don't buy it is the $2,300 sticker price. That's a very expensive gun. You can go out and build your own 300 Blackout AR-15 for a lot less than $2,399, which is what I think Cabela's is selling these things for, that being the Rattlers. So expensive, ergonomics rock solid, reliability for my gun rock solid. That may vary from gun to gun. Yeah, everything about it I love. Now, what I have learned in shooting it side by side with my BCM is that my BCM, even with its 9-inch barrel, I'm getting more of a powder burn. Even despite that, the Omega 9K can is quite a bit louder than the 7.62 QD can I have on the Rattler. If I want the Rattler to be as quiet as it is, which is one of the things I absolutely love about it, yeah, I'm not going to be able to put that Omega 9K can on there because it's going to get loud. And I'll show you the difference here really quick. I'm going to fire a few rounds out of my BCM, but also notice that there's considerably less gas in my face when I'm shooting the AR-15. Eyes aren't watering whatsoever, almost hardly any hint of gas in my face. with the AR-15. Now I'm going to do the same thing with my Rattler. I'm going to leave my glasses off. It doesn't make a difference. There's no gas seal with sunglasses. I just want you guys to see the effect this has at firing at the same cadence on my eyes with the gas, and just look for the gas around my face in general. So now my eyes are watering, my nose is burning. I even missed one round on a man-sized target at 50 yards because I couldn't see. This is not a very good suppressor host. Now that goes back to what the gentleman on Instagram was saying, who claims to be a SIG employee, is the gun was not designed to be suppressed. In my opinion, none of the MCX Virtus line of guns were designed to be suppressed, despite the fact they're capable of it, because they're all horrible gas guns in terms of gas to the face. I've never had any of them, including my original gun, be gas friendly. They gas you quite a bit. And that includes the 9mm gun. I think if you go back and take a look at when I was comparing the MPX to the Scorpion, one of the things I said about the 9mm MPX was that it just gassed you out because of its little short piston gas system in there. Everything about this gun puts gas in the shooter's face if you're using a silencer. Outside of that, I still like the gun, still going to keep it, still going to use it. I love how SIG innovates, and yes, I believe this to be an innovative gun. The quality on this thing looks superb, and yeah, I like it. I'll probably keep it around. I kind of sort of wish I'd gone the Virtus route just to get that longer barrel, but I'm going to be happy with the Rattler. Guys, if you'd like to support us here on the Military Arms channel, the best possible way to do that is to become a Patreon supporter. We do not take industry money. We don't take money from companies that manufacture firearms, and we don't take money from companies that import firearms. We are 100% viewer supported, and we're supported over at Patreon. There's a link down below. If you look in the description, you'll see how we finance ourselves here and how we fund ourselves and feed our families here at the Military Arms channel. And another way to do that, to support us that is to swing by and check out Forged from Freedom. Don't have one of the shirts on today, but Forged from Freedom makes our t-shirts. It's another great way to help support us here at the Military Arms channel. And last but not least, please swing by and check out coppercustom.com, which is our online store. We've been doing this now for 10 years, guys. We want to be the consumer advocate, not the industry advocate, and give you honest opinions about what we do out here on the Military Arms channel. Can't say we're always right, but I will say we will share an honest opinion. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll talk to you guys soon.